Dr. Elena Voss had been staring at the same seismic reading for almost an hour, and it still made no sense. She sat in a small trailer at the edge of the Taklamakan Desert, in western China, with 3 empty coffee cups beside her keyboard, and a 4th one going cold in her hand. Outside, the wind pushed sand against the metal walls of the trailer in slow waves, like the desert was breathing. The reading on her screen showed a shape, not a rock formation, not a natural cave system, a shape with straight edges, right angles, and a symmetry that nothing made by wind or water could ever produce. It sat nearly 4 kilometers below the surface, buried under layers of stone that geologists said were at least 60,000 years old. Elena was part of a joint research team, funded by the Earth Global Science Council, and monitored, loosely, by the Galactic Concord's Office of Cultural Observation. That office had a polite name and an impolite job. Its real purpose was to make sure that young species like humanity, did not accidentally dig up something dangerous. Or, more often, to make sure young species did not embarrass themselves by claiming they had found something important when they had only found a rock. Humanity had joined the Concorde 19 years earlier, after the Vexari scout ship Aramthiel entered the solar system and made contact near Ceres. Since then, humans had been welcomed into galactic society the way a new kid is welcomed into an old, established school. Politely, distantly, with a lot of unspoken assumptions about what that new kid could and could not do. The biggest assumption was this: humans were young. Not just young as a spacefaring civilization, but young as a species with any real history at all. The Concorde had methods for measuring the age of a civilization's story, its myths, its ruins, its written records. Human history, by their measurements, began around 6,000 years ago, with the first cities in Mesopotamia. Before that, according to the official Concorde assessment, there was nothing but scattered tribes, without the ability to leave a permanent mark on the galaxy. Elena had read that assessment more than once. It always bothered her, though she couldn't say exactly why. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was instinct. Now, looking at this shape buried under the desert, she felt something different. She felt like the assessment might be wrong. She called her colleague, Dr. Marcus Reyes, a structural geologist who had spent the last 2 years mapping deep rock layers across 3 continents. He walked into the trailer 10 minutes later, his jacket still dusty from the drill site. "You said it was urgent," Marcus said, dropping into the chair beside her. "Look at this," Elena said, turning her screen toward him. Marcus leaned in. He didn't say anything for a long moment, then he said, quietly, "That's not natural." "No," Elena agreed, "it's not." "How deep?" 3.8 kilometers. "And the age of the rock around it?" 60,000 years, minimum. Possibly older. We won't know for certain until we get closer. Marcus rubbed his face with both hands. "Elena, if this is what it looks like..." "I know." "No, I don't think you do. If this is artificial, and it's 60,000 years old, that breaks everything the Concorde has ever said about us. It breaks everything we've ever said about us." Elena nodded slowly. She had already thought about this, many times, in the hour before Marcus arrived. If the shape below them was made by something intelligent, and it was that old, then either it wasn't made by humans at all, which raised its own frightening questions about who else had been on Earth, or it was made by humans long before anyone believed humans were capable of building anything more advanced than a stone axe. Neither answer was simple. Both answers were enormous. "We have to report this to the council," Marcus said. "Tonight." "I already started the draft," Elena said. "But Marcus, listen. Once we report it, the Concorde observers will know within a day. And if this is what I think it is, they are not going to like it. 3,000 light-years away, in a chamber built from pale blue crystal that hummed faintly with power, Ambassador Kael'the, of the Vexari Compact, was reviewing reports from a dozen client worlds when the notification arrived. He was tall, even by Vexari standards, with skin the color of weathered copper, and eyes that shifted color slightly depending on his mood. Right now they were a calm gray-green, the color Kael'th wore when he expected nothing interesting to happen. The notification was flagged from the Office of Cultural Observation, subsection Earth. Kael'the almost dismissed it without reading further. Reports from Earth were rarely important. Humans were a young, loud, energetic species who built things quickly and asked too many questions, but they had not yet produced anything the compact considered historically significant. Their entire recorded history fit inside a single archive drive with room to spare. Still, protocol required him to read every flagged report from a member world, so he opened it. The words on the screen made his eyes shift color almost immediately, from gray-green to a sharp, alert blue. Anomalous structure detected, approximately 3.8 kilometers below surface. Geometric symmetry, inconsistent with natural formation. Surrounding rock strata dated at minimum 60,000 years. Human research team requests Concord Geological Survey support and formal classification review. Kael'th read it 3 times. 60,000 years. That number did not fit anywhere in the Concord's understanding of humanity. It did not fit anywhere in the Concord's understanding of Earth's biosphere, for that matter. 60,000 years ago, according to every record the Concord possessed, Earth had no intelligent species capable of shaping stone into anything more complex than a simple tool. His first thought was that the humans had made an error. Their instruments were still developing compared to Concord standards, and young species frequently misread their own data, eager to find something remarkable. He had seen this pattern many times, across dozens of new member worlds. A strange rock formation, an unusual mineral deposit. Excited scientists writing dramatic reports that turned out to be nothing. But something about this report felt different. The Concord's own long-range survey satellites, positioned in Earth orbit for the past 19 years, had picked up unusual seismic and magnetic readings from that same region for months. Kael'th had seen those readings in passing, and dismissed them as tectonic noise. Now he wondered if he had dismissed something important. He called for his aide, a smaller Vexari named Sira, who entered the chamber a moment later. "Pull every survey record we have on the Taklamakan desert region of Earth," Kael'th said. "Going back to first contact. Is something wrong, Ambassador?" "I don't know yet, but I want to know before the humans figure it out first." Back on Earth, the news moved quickly, once it reached the Global Science Council. Within 2 days, a joint excavation team was assembled, made up of engineers, archaeologists, geologists, and a handful of military advisors, whose job was officially logistics support, but whose real job everyone understood without needing to say it out loud. Elena was named lead archaeological consultant. Marcus stayed on as chief geologist. A third figure joined them on the 4th day, Colonel James Okafor, a broad-shouldered man with a calm voice and sharp eyes, representing Earth's Unified Defense Coordination Office. He didn't say much when he arrived. He mostly listened, watched the data, and asked precise questions. "How long until we can reach it?" Okafor asked, during the first full briefing inside the command tent. "With standard drilling, 6 months, maybe more," Marcus said. "But we've requested access to the deep-bore equipment the Concorde uses for planetary surveys. If they approve it, we could cut that down to 3 weeks. And if they don't approve it?" Elena answered that one. "Then we dig the old way, and we wait, and every government and every Concorde observer with an opinion gets to argue about what this is before we ever see it with our own eyes." Okafor nodded slowly. "So it's a race, not against nature, against opinions." "That's a good way to put it," Elena said. 2 days later, the Concorde's answer arrived. It was not a simple yes or no. It was Ambassador Kael'th himself, requesting to come to Earth in person, along with a small survey team, to observe the excavation directly. The request caused a stir among the human team. Some saw it as an insult, as though the Concorde did not trust humans to handle their own discovery honestly. Others saw it as an opportunity, a chance to prove, once and for all, that Earth's story was bigger than the Concorde believed. Elena saw it as both. "He's not just curious," she said to Marcus, reading the formal request for the 3rd time. "Look at the wording here. He's not asking to observe a geological anomaly. He's asking to observe a potential historical revision event." What does that mean exactly? It means the Concorde already suspects this could rewrite what they think they know about us, and that scares them a little. Species that get rewritten in the Concorde's records don't stay in the same category they started in. Marcus frowned. "You think they'll try to slow us down?" "I think," Elena said carefully, "that a species which has spent 19 years treating humanity like a talented child is not going to enjoy discovering that the child might be older than the teacher." Ambassador Cale Thieth arrived 11 days later, landing in a sleek, silver Concorde shuttle that drew a large crowd at the edge of the excavation perimeter, despite the military's best efforts to keep the site quiet. He stepped out flanked by 2 aides and a small team of Concorde surveyors, their equipment cases gleaming faintly, with a technology far beyond anything Earth produced. Elena greeted him personally at the perimeter gate. Ambassador Cale Thieth, welcome to the site. Dr. Voss. His voice was smooth, careful, diplomatic. Thank you for the invitation. I confess, I did not expect to be making this journey so soon after your initial report. Neither did we, Elena admitted. He studied her for a moment, his eyes a neutral, watchful gray. You understand, of course, that the Concorde must verify these findings independently, not because we doubt your team's competence, but because a discovery of this potential magnitude requires more than one set of eyes. I understand completely, Elena said. I'd want the same thing, if our positions were reversed. That answer seemed to surprise him slightly, though he covered it well. They walked together toward the drilling site, where the massive bore shaft, now widened using Concorde equipment loaned under careful agreement, descended into the earth like a great dark throat. Engineers moved along scaffolding at its edge, checking supports and sensor lines. The air smelled of diesel and turned earth and, faintly, of something metallic drifting up from far below. 3.8 kilometers, Cale said, looking down into the shaft. That is a significant depth for a structure to remain undisturbed. Whatever built it chose its location with great care. Or the location chose it, Elena said. 60,000 years is a long time. The desert wasn't always a desert. There could have been a very different landscape here once. Forests, rivers, maybe even a coastline further inland than it is now. Cale glanced at her. You are suggesting an entire lost environment, not merely a lost structure. I'm suggesting we don't actually know what we're going to find, Elena said, and I think that's the most honest thing anyone can say right now. He was quiet for a moment, watching the drilling crews work below. Then he said, in a tone that was almost, but not quite, a question. The Concorde archives are very thorough, Dr. Voss. They contain records reaching back tens of thousands of years for hundreds of worlds. Earth has always been listed among the newer stories. If that changes, it will not be a small adjustment. It will require rewriting portions of our understanding that have stood for centuries. I know, Elena said. That's what worries some of my colleagues. And you? Does it worry you? Elena looked down into the dark shaft, toward the place where something ancient and human-shaped, or perhaps not human-shaped at all, waited in silence. No, she said. It excites me. I've spent my whole career being told a story about what my species is. Young, simple, new to the galaxy. If that story is wrong, I want to know the truth, whatever it turns out to be. Cale said nothing for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice had lost some of its practiced diplomacy. So do I, he admitted quietly. Though I suspect, for very different reasons than yours. The drilling continued for 11 more days. The team moved carefully, mapping every layer of rock they passed through, cataloging sediment samples, watching the sensor readings grow stronger and more defined with each passing meter. The shape below them slowly resolved from a vague geometric anomaly into something with recognizable features. Long, straight corridors, wide-open chambers, structural supports arranged with obvious engineering intent. It was, without question, artificial. On the 12th day, at a depth of 3.6 kilometers, the drill crews broke through into open space. Not solid rock, air, a cavity, vast and dark, stretching far beyond what any single sensor sweep could measure. The command tent went silent when the readings came in. Elena stared at the numbers on the screen, her hands trembling slightly. That's not a chamber, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper. That's not even a room. Elena, that's a cavern, an artificial cavern, kilometers across. Colonel Okafor leaned over the display, his jaw tight. Show me the outline. The scan resolved slowly, line by line, into a shape that made everyone in the tent go quiet. Docking cradles, rows of them, evenly spaced, running along the length of the cavern in orderly formation. Structures shaped, unmistakably, like berths meant to hold something large, something built to fly. It's a shipyard, Elena said softly. It's an ancient shipyard. Ambassador Kale, standing at the back of the tent, said nothing at all. His eyes had shifted to a color none of the humans present had ever seen on him before, somewhere between disbelief and something that looked almost like fear. Because if this was true, if humans had built ships, real ships, capable of leaving the ground, 60,000 years before the Concorde believed they had even learned to farm, then everything the galaxy thought it knew about Earth's quiet, harmless, young species was about to be proven catastrophically wrong. And somewhere, deep in the dark cavern below them, something that had waited in silence for 60,000 years was about to wake up. For 3 days after the discovery of the cavern, nobody at the excavation site slept very much. The command tent buzzed with activity around the clock, engineers and scientists trading shifts, coffee replaced by energy drinks replaced by pure adrenaline. News of the find had been kept quiet from the public, but inside the small circle of people who knew, the mood was somewhere between celebration and disbelief. Elena Voss had not left the site in 4 days. She sat now in a reinforced elevator car, descending slowly into the earth, alongside Marcus Reyes, Colonel Okafor, and Ambassador Kale Th. The elevator had been built quickly, using a combination of human construction techniques and Concorde safety equipment, lowered down the widened shaft on thick cables that hummed faintly with tension. Nobody spoke during the descent. The only sound was the low mechanical whir of the elevator and the occasional creak of metal settling under strain. When the doors finally opened, no one moved for a moment. They simply stood and looked. The cavern stretched out before them, lit now by portable floodlights strung along temporary scaffolding, though the true size of the space swallowed the light almost completely. The ceiling rose high overhead, easily 200 meters, supported by massive stone pillars carved, not naturally formed, but carved, into smooth, tapering shapes. The docking cradles Elena had seen in the sensor scans stood in long rows, disappearing into darkness in both directions. And in several of those cradles, unmistakably, sat ships. They were not shaped like anything modern human engineering had ever produced. They were sleek, elongated, with a strange organic curve to their hulls that reminded Elena of something between a blade and a bird's wing. Their surfaces were dull with age, covered in a fine layer of dust that had settled over 60,000 years, but even through that dust, faint patterns were visible, etched into the metal in long, flowing lines. "My God," Marcus whispered. Colonel Okafor stepped forward first, his hand resting instinctively near his sidearm, though there was nothing here that seemed to threaten them. "Dr. Voss, can you read any of those markings?" Elena moved closer to the nearest pillar, studying the etched lines. They were not any writing system she recognized, not Sumerian, not Egyptian hieroglyphics, not any of the earliest known human scripts. But there was something about their rhythm, the way certain shapes repeated in patterns, that felt unmistakably intentional, structured, a language. "No," she admitted, "not yet, but it's writing, I'm sure of it." Ambassador Kaleth walked slowly along the row of ships, his aides trailing behind him with scanning equipment raised. His face, usually carefully neutral, showed something closer to open astonishment. "These construction techniques," he said quietly, almost to himself, "the hull geometry, the alloy composition, if my scanners are correct, this predates even the oldest ships in the Concorde archives." "How much older?" Okafor asked. Kale checked the readout on his aide's scanner, then looked up, his eyes a deep, troubled violet. "Based on preliminary analysis, and assuming the material has not been altered by later intervention, these vessels may be older than any recorded starfaring civilization currently known to the Concorde." The words hung in the air for a long moment. "That's not possible," Marcus said. "The Concorde has been mapping this region of the galaxy for, what, 500,000 years?" "Closer to 700,000, Kaleth said. "And in all that time, no civilization has been recorded reaching this level of technological achievement from this world. According to every record we possess, Earth was uninhabited by intelligent life until approximately 200,000 years ago, and did not develop complex civilization until roughly 6,000 years ago." "So either your records are wrong," Elena said, "or something happened to erase this from history. Completely." Kaleth did not answer right away. He turned back toward the ships, his expression unreadable now, carefully composed once more. Both possibilities disturb me equally, Dr. Voss. The following weeks brought a flood of new discoveries, each one stranger than the last. Deeper survey teams, moving carefully through the vast cavern with portable lights and specialized equipment borrowed from Concord archaeological divisions, mapped dozens of additional chambers branching off from the main shipyard. Storage rooms filled with materials no one could yet identify, long hallways lined with what appeared to be workstations, their surfaces smooth and featureless, waiting for hands that had not touched them in tens of thousands of years. And then, in the 9th week, they found the archive room. It was smaller than the other chambers, tucked away behind a heavy door that took engineers 3 full days to open, without damaging whatever lay behind it. Inside, rows of dark, crystalline structures rose from floor to ceiling, arranged in careful order, each one roughly the size of a human torso. Data storage, Marcus said, running a scanner over the nearest crystal. Has to be. Look at the internal structure. It's layered, almost like memory architecture. Can we access it? Okafor asked. Not with our equipment, Elena said. But maybe. She glanced toward Cale Thieth. The ambassador studied the crystal formations carefully, his aides already running their own scans. Our archival technology is significantly more advanced than yours, Dr. Voss. But even so, I do not recognize this data format. It may take time to develop a proper interface. It took 11 days. Concord engineers, working alongside human specialists, built a careful bridge system designed to read the ancient crystal without damaging it. When the connection finally succeeded, the massive central crystal at the heart of the archive room flickered faintly with a soft blue light, the first light it had produced in 60,000 years. A voice spoke. It was not a human voice, not exactly, though it had a strange, layered quality that felt somehow familiar, like an echo of something Elena couldn't quite place. It spoke in a language none of them recognized at first, until the translation systems, working furiously, began producing rough approximations. Identification requested, state designation. The room went completely silent. Everyone looked at each other, unsure what to do. Finally, Elena stepped forward. We are human. From Earth. We don't know who, or what, you are. There was a pause. Then the voice spoke again, and this time the translation came through more smoothly, as though the system, whatever it was, had quickly adapted to modern human speech patterns. Human designation confirmed. Genetic markers align with archived baseline population. Query: how much time has passed since final shutdown sequence? Marcus checked his tablet with shaking hands. It's asking how long it's been offline. Tell it, Okafor said quietly. Elena took a slow breath. As best we can determine, approximately 60,000 years. Another pause, longer this time. That is, significantly longer than anticipated parameters, the voice said, and for a moment, something in its tone sounded almost like sorrow. Then the sundering was successful, and the memory of what came before has been lost. What sundering? Elena asked immediately. What are you? What is this place? I am Custodian 7, archival intelligence assigned to Shipyard Complex Meridian Prime, constructed under the authority of the old Concordance. This facility was sealed and hidden as part of the final defense protocol during the closing days of the Sundering War. KLT's aides had stopped scanning entirely. Every person in the room was staring at the softly glowing crystal, waiting. The old Concordance? KLT said slowly, stepping forward for the first time. I have never heard that term in any Concord record. That does not surprise me, Custodian 7 replied. The old Concordance predates your Concord by a significant span of time. It was humanity's civilization, an interstellar alliance, built by the people of this world, spanning many star systems, before it was destroyed. The words landed like a physical blow. Elena felt her pulse pounding in her ears. You're telling us, she said slowly, that humans built an interstellar civilization before any of this. She gestured around the archive room, at the ships in the cavern above, at the entire buried complex. And it was destroyed? Yes, Custodian 7 said simply. It was destroyed, deliberately, and the survivors chose to erase all memory of it, to protect what remained of the species from being hunted to extinction. Ambassador Cale Thilth requested a private communication channel back to Concord leadership that same night. Elena, watching from a distance as he stood alone near the cavern entrance speaking quietly into his communicator, couldn't hear the words, but she could read his posture. Tense, careful, a diplomat trying to control information that was already impossible to contain. Later, he found her near the elevator, waiting for the ride back to the surface. "You reported everything," she said. It wasn't quite a question. "I had no choice," Cale admitted. "This discovery affects far more than Earth's historical record, Dr. Voss. If there was once a civilization capable of this," he gestured toward the cavern behind them, "and it was destroyed by something powerful enough to erase all trace of it from galactic memory, then the Concord needs to understand what that something was. Before it happens again. Or before it comes back," Elena said quietly. Cale Theth's eyes shifted to a deep, uneasy gray. "That thought had occurred to me as well." They rode the elevator up together in silence, both thinking about the same question, though neither said it aloud. If an ancient enemy had been powerful enough to destroy an entire interstellar human civilization once, and force its survivors into 60,000 years of hiding, what would happen now that the buried shipyard had been found again, and its archive had woken up to answer their questions? Over the following days, Custodian 7 became a careful, guarded source of information, answering questions slowly, methodically, as though testing how much it could trust the people asking them. It explained that the old Concordance had been a vast human civilization, built over thousands of years, spreading gradually to nearby star systems, long before most currently known galactic species had even developed agriculture. It explained that the Sundering War had begun when an alliance of powerful ancient beings Custodian 7, referred to only as the Severed, refusing to elaborate further, viewed the growing human civilization as a threat that needed to be eliminated before it could mature into something unstoppable. It explained that the war had lasted decades, and that in the end, facing total annihilation, the last surviving leaders of the old Concordance made a desperate choice: to destroy the visible remnants of their own civilization, hide their remaining fleets and knowledge in facilities like this one, and send the last survivors back to their homeworlds to begin again from nothing. No records, no memory, no trace for the Severed to hunt down and finish. "They chose to forget themselves," Elena said quietly, after hearing this explanation for the third time, still struggling to fully accept it. "On purpose. To survive." "Yes," Custodian 7 confirmed. "It was the only strategy that offered any chance of long-term survival for the species. A civilization with no memory of greatness presents no target. A species that believes itself young, simple, and harmless draws far less attention than one that remembers what it once built." Colonel Okafor, standing nearby, folded his arms. "So for 60,000 years, humanity's been hiding in plain sight, without even knowing it." "Correct," the Archive Intelligence said, "and this facility, along with others like it, scattered across the old territories of the Concordance, was constructed as a contingency. A seed, buried deep, to be recovered only when humanity had once again reached a level of maturity sufficient to survive what comes next." "What comes next?" Elena asked, though some part of her already dreaded the answer. "The Severed were never fully defeated," Custodian 7 said. "They were driven back, weakened, forced into a long retreat, but they were never destroyed, and should this facility ever be found and reactivated, protocol dictates a very high probability that their attention will eventually return to Earth, and to whatever remains of the species they once tried to erase." Ambassador Cale Theth's eyes went dark, unreadable. Elena felt a cold weight settle in her chest. They had come looking for buried history. Instead, they had found a warning, and possibly, without meaning to, rung a bell that something ancient and terrible might still be listening for. News of the shipyard could not stay secret forever. Within a month of Custodian 7's first words, the story had spread far beyond the small circle of scientists and diplomats who had first stood in that dark cavern beneath the desert. It moved through official Concord channels first, carefully worded, heavily filtered, but it moved. And once information like that begins to travel among 1,000 different species with 1,000 different interests, there is no way to fully contain it. Elena Voss stood in the same command tent where this had all begun, though it barely resembled its original form anymore. What had once been a modest field office was now the center of a rapidly expanding research and security compound, ringed by fencing, sensor towers, and a small but growing presence of both human and Concord personnel. The tent's walls had been replaced with a hardened structure. The coffee machine, at least, had survived. "They're calling it the Meridian Find," Marcus said, scrolling through a tablet filled with news alerts from a dozen different worlds. "Some outlets are calling it the biggest historical discovery in Concord history. Others are saying it's a hoax. A few are saying it's dangerous and should be resealed immediately." "What do the Concord's official channels say?" Elena asked. "Officially, they're monitoring the situation and coordinating with Earth authorities to ensure proper historical verification protocols." Marcus made a face, which is diplomatic language for, "We have no idea what to do, and we're panicking quietly." Colonel Okafor entered the tent, his expression grim. "We have a problem." "Just the one?" Marcus muttered. "A big one," Okafor said, ignoring the comment. He set a tablet down on the table, displaying a tracking feed of ship movement in the outer solar system. 3 unidentified vessels entered the system 2 hours ago. They're not broadcasting Concord registration codes. Elena felt her stomach tighten. "Who are they?" "We don't know yet. Concord Orbital Defense flagged them as unregistered but not immediately hostile. They're holding position near the asteroid belt, watching." Ambassador Cale Teeth, who had been reviewing translated archive data at the far end of the tent, looked up sharply. "Show me their configuration." Okafor pulled up the feed. Cale studied it for a long moment, his eyes shifting slowly to a deep, wary violet. "I do not recognize the hull design," he admitted, "which is, in itself, concerning. The Concord catalogs the ship designs of every known species within 1,000 light-years. If these vessels do not match any entry in that catalog, then they're not from anywhere the Concord knows about," Elena finished quietly. "Or," Cale said, "they are from somewhere the Concord has deliberately chosen to forget." The tent went quiet. "You think it's them," Marcus said. "The severed." "I think," Cale said carefully, "that it would be unwise to assume otherwise until proven wrong." Custodian 7 had grown more communicative with each passing week, as though 60,000 years of caution were slowly, carefully thawing. When Elena brought the news of the unidentified ships down into the archive chamber, the Ancient Intelligence's response came almost immediately, with none of its usual measured pauses. "Describe their approach vector and formation." Elena relayed what Okafor had shown her. The crystal pulsed with a faster, more agitated rhythm of light. "That formation is consistent with a severed scouting pattern," Custodian 7 said. 3 vessels, holding at the edge of a system, gathering data before deciding whether to commit further forces. This is how they operated during the final years of the Sundering War. Patient, methodical. They do not attack without certainty. "How much time do we have?" Elena asked. "Uncertain. It depends entirely on what they observe, and what conclusions they draw. If they detect renewed activity from this facility, and correctly identify its nature, they may commit to an attack within days. If they remain uncertain, they may withdraw and return later, in greater numbers, once they are prepared." "That's not exactly reassuring," Marcus said. "I do not offer reassurance," the Archive Intelligence replied. "I offer information. What you do with it determines what happens next." Elena crossed her arms, thinking hard. "You said this facility was built to reactivate when humanity reached the maturity to survive what came next. Does that mean there's something here that can actually help us? Something more than old ships and archive records?" There was a pause, longer this time, deliberate. "There is a reactivation protocol," Custodian 7 said finally. "Should the facility ever be recovered under conditions matching certain criteria, the dormant fleet held within this shipyard can be restored to functional status. However, the process is neither quick nor without risk. Full reactivation requires time, resources, and, most critically, verified authority." "Verified authority?" Okafor asked, stepping closer. "What does that mean?" "The reactivation protocol was designed to prevent misuse by hostile forces, who might discover this facility before humanity itself returned to reclaim it. It requires confirmation that those requesting activation are, in fact, descendants of the old concordance, acting in the interest of Earth and its people. A genetic and intent verification, performed through direct interface. Can you do that verification? Elena asked. Now? With us? I can begin the process, Custodian 7 said, but I must warn you. Once initiated, the reactivation sequence cannot be easily reversed. Awakening this fleet will draw attention, significant attention. If the Severed detect the shipyard returning to full power, they will no longer wonder what has happened here. They will know. Elena looked around the chamber, at Marcus's tense expression, at Okafor's carefully controlled calm, at Kale Thieth standing near the entrance, his eyes still that deep, thoughtful violet. If we don't reactivate, she said slowly, and those ships out there are what we think they are, what happens? Then Earth faces an ancient enemy with nothing but its current, limited defenses, Custodian 7 said. An enemy that once fought and nearly destroyed an entire interstellar human civilization. I would not rate your chances favorably. Nobody said anything for a long moment. Do it, Okafor said finally. Start the verification. The verification process took 3 days. Elena, along with a dozen carefully chosen volunteers representing a wide range of human genetic backgrounds, underwent a strange, painless scanning procedure inside a chamber deep within the shipyard complex, one that had clearly been designed for humans, 60,000 years ago, by humans who had understood their own biology far better than modern science yet did. On the third night, Custodian 7's voice returned with a different tone, steadier, almost relieved. Verification complete. Genetic lineage confirmed. Intent parameters satisfied. Beginning reactivation sequence. The entire cavern trembled softly, a deep vibration that Elena felt in her chest before she heard it. Along the rows of docking cradles, one by one, faint lights began to flicker to life beneath decades, no, millennia, of dust. The ancient ships, silent for 60,000 years, began, slowly, to wake. It was, Elena thought, one of the most beautiful and terrifying things she had ever witnessed. Ambassador Kale stood beside her, watching the lights spread down the length of the cavern, like a slow sunrise breaking across an underground sky. I have spent my entire career studying the history of 1,000 worlds, he said quietly. I have never witnessed anything like this. Neither have we, Elena admitted. This is our history too, Ambassador. We just didn't know it existed until 3 months ago. He turned to look at her, his eyes shifting to a color she hadn't seen from him before, something calm and strangely respectful. Dr. Voss, I must tell you something, and I ask that you consider it carefully. The Concord's assessment of your species will change entirely once this becomes fully known. Humanity will no longer be viewed as a young, simple people newly arrived among the stars. What will we be viewed as then? Survivors, Kale said. Of a war most of the galaxy does not even remember happened. That is not a small thing. Some among the Concord will fear that. Others will respect it. A few, I suspect, will try to use it for their own purposes. Elena nodded slowly. And the ones out there? She gestured vaguely upward, toward the sky, toward the 3 unidentified ships still holding position at the edge of the solar system. The Severed? Kale Thieth's expression grew serious. They will almost certainly attack Dr. Voss, soon, before this fleet reaches full readiness, if they can manage it. An awakening shipyard is the single greatest threat their strategy has faced in tens of thousands of years. They will not wait patiently to see how this develops. As if summoned by his words, Colonel Okafor's voice crackled urgently over the tense comm system, reaching them even this deep underground. Dr. Voss, Ambassador Kale, you need to get up here immediately. The 3 unidentified ships just changed course. They're moving toward Earth. And Concord tracking is picking up at least a dozen more emerging from deep space behind them. Elena felt her heart pound hard against her ribs. The war that humanity had buried, forgotten, and quietly survived for 60,000 years was no longer a memory sealed inside a dark archive chamber. It was coming home. The command tent had transformed into something closer to a war room within the hour. Screens lined the walls, showing tracking data pulled from Concord orbital sensors, Earth's own defense satellites, and now, faintly, from the newly awakening systems deep within the ancient shipyard itself. Elena stood near the center of it, watching the 12 additional contacts resolve slowly out of the sensor noise, each one a cold, unfamiliar shape moving steadily toward the inner solar system. Confirmed count is now 15 vessels, Okafor said, his voice tight but controlled. 3 scout class, 12 larger contacts we're still analyzing. Concord Defense Fleet in this system currently has 6 ships available for immediate response. 6 against 15, Marcus said. That's not good. It's worse than that, Kael'th said grimly, studying the data over Okafor's shoulder. Those 6 ships are a standard defense patrol, positioned to handle piracy and minor incidents. They are not equipped or trained to fight a force like this. Elena turned to the small communication crystal that had been carefully transported up from the shipyard chamber, now connected to a portable interface unit, sitting on the command table. Custodian 7. How long until the fleet down there reaches combat readiness? Current estimate, 18 hours for the first wave of vessels to reach minimal operational status. Full fleet readiness would require significantly longer, approximately 6 days. We don't have 6 days, Okafor said. We might not have 18 hours. I am aware of the constraints, Custodian 7 replied, its tone as calm and measured as ever, though Elena thought she detected something almost like urgency beneath it now. I am prioritizing the vessels closest to full readiness. 12 ships can be brought to a minimally functional combat state within 9 hours, if all available resources are directed toward that goal. Do it, Elena said immediately. Whatever you need, you have it. Kael'th straightened, his eyes shifting to a determined, focused amber. I will contact Concord Fleet Command directly. If Earth is about to become the target of a severed assault, the Concord cannot simply stand by. Whatever disagreements exist about historical classification, this is now a matter of collective defense. Will they listen? Elena asked. They will listen, Kael'th said. Whether they will act quickly enough is a different question entirely. The next several hours passed in a blur of frantic preparation. Engineers, both human and Concord, worked side by side, deep within the shipyard, guided by Custodian 7's careful instructions, coaxing 60,000-year-old systems back to life, one component at a time. Above ground, Earth's own defense forces scrambled into readiness, coordinating uneasily with the small Concord patrol fleet, still holding position near the outer planets. Elena spent most of those hours moving between the surface command tent and the shipyard chamber below, relaying information, answering Custodian 7's occasional questions about current human military capability, trying to help build some kind of coherent strategy out of chaos. It was during one of these trips, riding the elevator down into the depths of the Earth, that she found herself alone with Ambassador Kael'th for the first time since the crisis began. Of course. Earlier, you said some among the Concord would fear what humanity has become. Are you one of them? Kael'th was quiet for a long moment, watching the numbers tick downward on the elevator's display. I will admit, he said finally, that when I first read your report about the anomalous structure beneath the desert, some part of me hoped it would turn out to be nothing, a misinterpreted rock formation, an error in your instruments. Why? Because the Concord I have served my entire life is built on a certain understanding of the galaxy's history, a certain order. Species like yours, young, developing, occupy a particular place within that order. It is comfortable, predictable. What we are witnessing now does not fit comfortably into that order at all. And now, he looked at her directly, his eyes a steady, thoughtful gray. Now, Dr. Voss, I find that I am no longer afraid of what your species has been. I am afraid of what might happen to your species in the next 24 hours. Those are very different fears. Elena managed a small, tired smile. That's oddly comforting, in a strange way. I am a diplomat, Kael'th said. Finding strange comfort in difficult situations is somewhat my specialty. 9 hours later, 12 ancient ships rose slowly out of the desert, breaking free from the shipyard cavern through massive hidden launch corridors that had remained sealed for 60,000 years. They moved with a strange, fluid grace despite their age, their long blade-like hulls catching the last light of the setting sun as they climbed toward orbit. Elena watched from the surface, standing beside Marcus and Okafor, all 3 of them craning their necks upward as the ancient fleet passed overhead in tight formation, engines glowing with a soft, steady blue light that had not been seen in Earth's sky in 60,000 years. They're beautiful, Marcus said quietly. They're old, Okafor said. I hope that's not the same as fragile. Structural integrity remains within acceptable parameters. Custodian 7's voice came through the portable interface unit Okafor carried on his belt. These vessels were built to endure. That is precisely why they have survived until now. The 12 ships broke atmosphere and joined the growing defense formation gathering at the edge of the solar system, alongside the 6 Concord patrol ships and a handful of additional vessels that had arrived in response to Kael'th's urgent calls. Reinforcements from 2 neighboring systems, though not nearly as many as anyone had hoped for. The severed fleet continued its approach. Elena, Marcus, and Okafor moved to the command tent's secondary display, now linked directly into the growing tactical network, watching the 2 forces close the distance between them, across the vast dark space of the outer solar system. "Any communication from them?" Elena asked. "None," Okafor said. "Not a single signal. They're not even trying to talk." "That is consistent with historical patterns," Custodian 7 said. "The severed do not negotiate with what they perceive as a resolved threat. From their perspective, humanity was eliminated 60,000 years ago. They are not here to discuss terms. They are here to correct an error." "That's a cheerful way to put it," Marcus muttered. The 2 fleets closed within engagement range 4 hours later. Elena watched the tactical display with her heart in her throat, as the first exchange of weapons fire lit up the darkness between Earth and the edge of its solar system. Distant flashes of light representing violence on a scale she had never imagined witnessing in her lifetime. The ancient human ships, guided partly by Custodian 7's tactical algorithms and partly by hastily trained human and Concord crews working together for the first time, moved with a coordinated precision that surprised everyone watching, including, Elena suspected, the severed themselves. "They're holding," Okafor said, watching the display with fierce concentration. "The formation's holding." The ancient fleet's weapon systems remain significantly more advanced than current severed technology, Custodian 7 reported. "It appears their forces have not adapted their strategies to account for a fully modernized Concordance defense fleet, likely because they did not believe such a fleet still existed. They thought we were still asleep," Elena said slowly, understanding dawning. "They came here expecting an easy kill, a cleanup operation, not a real fight." "Correct," Custodian 7 confirmed, "and that assumption may prove to be their critical error." The battle raged for nearly 2 hours. Elena watched, unable to look away, as the combined fleet, ancient human vessels, modern Concord ships, and the small but determined contribution of Earth's own limited orbital defenses, slowly gained the upper hand against the severed assault force. 3 enemy vessels were destroyed outright. 4 more retreated, badly damaged, vanishing back into deep space, faster than any sensor could track their departure vector. The remaining 8 ships broke formation entirely, scattering, clearly no longer operating under any coordinated strategy. "Severed forces are withdrawing," Custodian 7 announced finally, and this time, there was no mistaking the note of quiet relief in its ancient, careful voice. "Immediate threat to Earth has been neutralized." The command tent erupted into exhausted, disbelieving cheers. Elena felt her knees go weak with relief, and she sat down heavily in the nearest chair, letting out a long, shaking breath she felt like she had been holding for hours. Marcus dropped into the chair beside her, grinning despite the exhaustion clearly written across his face. "We actually did it." "We didn't do anything," Elena said, laughing weakly. "Our ancestors did it. 60,000 years ago, they built this fleet. We just woke it up in time." Ambassador Kael'th approached slowly, his expression a careful mixture of relief and something deeper, something that looked almost like awe. "Dr. Voss," he said quietly, "I do not believe the Concord will ever look at your species the same way again." Elena looked up at him, still catching her breath. "Is that a good thing, Ambassador?" Kael'th considered the question seriously, watching the tactical display where the last retreating severed contacts faded slowly out of sensor range. "I believe," he said finally, "that it is going to be a very interesting thing, for all of us." 6 months after the battle, at the edge of the solar system, Elena Voss stood once again inside the great cavern beneath the Taklamakan desert, though it looked nothing like the dark, silent tomb she had first descended into. The docking cradles that had sat empty and dusty for 60,000 years now hummed with quiet activity, engineers and technicians, human and Concord alike, moving between half-repaired hulls and freshly installed systems. Soft blue light filled the vast chamber, no longer the ghostly glow of an ancient reactivation sequence, but the steady, working light of a shipyard that had, after 60,000 years, finally come back to life for good. She still wasn't entirely used to the sight. "You look tired," Marcus said, walking up beside her with 2 cups of coffee, handing one over without being asked. "I am tired," Elena admitted, taking the cup gratefully. "Good tired, though. Productive tired." "There's a difference?" "There is, when you've spent 6 months helping rebuild an ancient interstellar civilization's shipbuilding infrastructure, instead of just digging through old dirt for interesting rocks." Marcus laughed. "Fair point." The battle against the severed scouting force had changed everything, though not in the sudden, dramatic way some had expected. There had been no immediate follow-up attack, no massive invasion fleet descending on Earth in the weeks that followed. Custodian 7 had explained that the severed were, by nature, patient and calculating. A failed scouting engagement, even one as costly as the one they'd suffered, was unlikely to provoke an immediate large-scale response. More likely, the ancient enemy was now recalculating, reassessing, trying to understand exactly what had changed, and how much of a threat this reawakened human civilization truly represented. That, everyone agreed, was both good news and a serious warning. Good news, because it meant Earth had time to prepare. A warning, because it meant the threat had not gone away. It had simply gone quiet. In the months since, the Concord's official position on humanity had shifted dramatically, and not always smoothly. Some member species reacted with genuine respect, even something close to reverence, toward a civilization that had survived total war and 60,000 years of forced obscurity, only to rise again stronger than before. Others reacted with suspicion, worried about what an awakened humanity might mean for the current balance of power across known space. A few, predictably, tried to find ways to use the discovery for their own political advantage, filing formal requests for access to old concordance technology, citing historical partnership treaties that Elena suspected had been invented on the spot. Ambassador Cale Taith had become, somewhat to his own surprise, Earth's most consistent and vocal advocate within Concord leadership. He approached Elena and Marcus now, walking alongside a tall, silver-haired woman Elena recognized from recent news briefings, Dr. Amara Chen, the newly appointed head of Earth's Bureau of Historical Recovery, a position that hadn't existed 6 months ago. "Dr. Voss," Cale greeted warmly. "I have good news, for once." "I could use some," Elena said. "What's happened?" "The Concord Council has formally approved Earth's petition for recognized status as a founding legacy species," Cale said. "It is a classification that has not been granted to anyone in over 200,000 years. It acknowledges your civilization's history prior to the Sundering, and grants Earth expanded rights within Concord governance structures, including a permanent seat on the Historical Preservation Committee." Marcus let out a low whistle. "That's a big deal, right?" "It is an enormous deal," Cale confirmed, "though I suspect Dr. Chen would explain the political implications far better than I can." Dr. Chen smiled, though there was something careful and pragmatic beneath it. "It's a big deal, and it's also complicated. Recognition brings responsibilities. Other species will expect us to act like an experienced civilization now, not a newcomer. Some will test us, to see if the reputation matches reality, and the severed situation remains completely unresolved. If anything, this recognition raises our profile at exactly the moment we most need to stay quiet and prepared." "So it's a mixed blessing," Elena said. "Most important things usually are," Chen replied. Later that evening, Elena found herself back in the archive chamber, alone except for the soft, steady pulse of Custodian 7's crystal housing. She had come to appreciate these quiet visits over the past 6 months, moments away from the noise of politics and reconstruction, just her and the ancient intelligence that had waited, patiently, for 60,000 years to share its story. "You seem troubled, Dr. Voss," Custodian 7 observed. "Just thinking," Elena said, settling into the chair that had been permanently installed near the crystal for exactly these conversations. "About everything that's changed. About everything that's still coming. Change was inevitable, once this facility was recovered," Custodian 7 said. "That was always understood, even in the earliest planning of this contingency. The old Concordance's leaders knew that whoever eventually rediscovered this place would face difficult choices. Did they leave any guidance, any advice, for whoever came after them? There was a pause, longer than usual. There is a recorded message, Custodian 7 said finally, left by the last chancellor of the old Concordance, intended for whoever eventually recovered this facility. I have withheld it until now, uncertain whether the appropriate context had been reached. I believe it has been reached. The crystal's glow shifted, deepened, and a new voice emerged, different from Custodian 7's careful, measured tone. This voice was older sounding somehow, weary but steady, unmistakably human despite the strange formality of its phrasing. To whoever finds this message, if you are hearing these words, it means our final gamble succeeded. Our civilization is gone, erased by our own hand, so that our people might live. I do not know how much time has passed. I do not know what kind of world you have built in our absence, or what kind of people you have become. I hope, more than anything, that you have known peace, even if only for a while. I want you to understand something important. We did not choose to forget ourselves because we were ashamed of what we built. We chose to forget because we loved what we built too much to watch it be destroyed along with us. We hid our history, not to abandon it, but to protect it, so that one day, when you were ready, you could reclaim it. You are not starting from nothing. You never were. You carry within you the same strength, the same stubbornness, the same refusal to simply disappear, that carried us through our darkest hour. Use it well. Build something better than we did, and if the severed return, as I fear they eventually will, remember this: we did not survive because we were strongest. We survived because we refused to stop trying. Good luck, whoever you are. I am proud of you already. The message ended. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft, steady hum of Custodian 7's crystal. Elena sat quietly for a long moment, feeling tears she hadn't expected slide down her face. Thank you for sharing that, she said finally, her voice rough. You are welcome, Dr. Voss, Custodian 7 replied gently. I believe the Chancellor would be glad to know that her message finally reached the people it was intended for. 3 months later, Elena stood on a small platform overlooking the Shipyard cavern, now fully restored and busier than ever, as Earth's first officially commissioned interstellar defense fleet prepared for its maiden deployment, not as ancient relics reawakened, but as modern vessels, rebuilt and upgraded, using a careful blend of old Concordance engineering and current human and Concord technology. Ambassador Kael'th stood beside her, along with Marcus, Okafor, and Dr. Chen, all watching as the ships moved slowly out of their cradles, engines glowing bright and steady. It's strange, Elena said quietly. 6 months ago, we were just trying to figure out what a weird shape in some seismic data meant. Now look at all this. History has a way of moving quickly, once it decides to move at all, Kael'th said. What happens now? Marcus asked. For Earth, I mean. For all of us. Elena watched the fleet rise slowly toward the cavern's massive launch corridors, carrying with it 60,000 years of buried history and an uncertain, dangerous future. Now, she said, we do exactly what our ancestors did. We keep going. We build something worth protecting. And if the severed ever come back looking for a species they thought they destroyed, they're going to find out exactly how wrong they were. Kael'th's eyes shifted to a warm, steady gold, a color Elena had come to recognize, over the past months, as something close to genuine respect. Dr. Voss, he said, I have represented the Concord across dozens of worlds, for many years. I have never once been more curious to see what a species does next. Elena smiled, watching the fleet disappear into the darkening sky above the desert, carrying humanity's ancient legacy toward whatever waited for them among the stars. Neither have I, Ambassador, she said. Neither have I.